Hello, so welcome this evening, and I'm going to do a little presentation on fertility and how we can support it with traditional Chinese medicine, well, especially with Shiatsu, which is what I work with. And then I'm going to show you a few exercises and self-treatments that you can do yourself. And just before I started recording this, we've been chatting with people about what are issues to do with fertility and why might some women have issues conceiving? And actually, to be honest, there are so many different reasons why we can't conceive. There could be something physical going on. So, and also we have to remember that for conception, we do need two people. We need a man for the sperm and a woman. So we need to also think about the health of both the man and the woman, and in the relationship as well, what can be going on. And within the living situation, there are many things that can actually block conception from happening that aren't necessarily to do with our physical body. But that's what I love about Chinese medicine, that even with our emotions and whatever's going on in our life, we can work with our body, and our body isn't seen as separate from our mind or our environment, because the bottom line in all Chinese medicine is that we're part of a whole, and anything on the whole can influence us. And it is true that modern fertility treatments tend to just focus more on what I'd say are the mechanics of conceiving, like changing hormone levels or maturing eggs or putting eggs and sperm together. But that doesn't necessarily resolve the more emotional stuff that's going on. And then we talked a lot about safety as well. And it's becoming pregnant is all about how we're feeling in ourselves, in our relationship, but also in our environment. If our environment doesn't feel safe, like with birth as well, or like with anything in our life, but it's amazing around fertility and birth, then our body can actually physically stop us conceiving. So I mean, I have worked with some women who've had lots of IVF treatments and not conceived, and then they just think, okay, I'm not meant to conceive, and then they conceive. And for others, it's the other way around, and it's really complex. So, but it's really complex in lots of ways, in that it could be emotional or physical or environmental. But in Chinese medicine, it basically comes down to our expression of our essence. And I'll explain a bit what essence is. Essence is the Chinese word is the Jing, and it's basically the energy that comes into our body at the moment of conception. So it's the joining together of the egg and the sperm, and that's called the Jing. And we were talking also before I started recording this about that often people think of that as just the ancestral energy in Chinese medicine, that it's the kind of like the energetic DNA that comes together, the energy of the egg and the energy of the sperm. And then we often talk about like how the egg and the sperm, that the early cells that will create them are already present when a boy or a girl is in the womb of their mother, already from 5 weeks after conception. I think that's quite mind-blowing, actually. And that the cells that will become the future egg or the future sperm that will lead to conception and therefore create a new being have really directly been imprinted by the energy of the mother and also of the paternal line, because they've been within of the mother's and the father's body since they were in the womb of their mother. And that imprinting is really profound. So yes, there is an ancestral quality of energy that determines our essence and therefore influences our capacity to become fertile, to reproduce. So maybe it's actually not even something in our lifetime. It can be a pattern within our family history. Often I have worked with people and there've been quite deep fears about dying, in childbirth, and dying in birth is really rare these days. Maybe not so rare in some countries or some continents like Africa or Asia, but certainly if we live in Europe or America. But in our ancestral line, there might have been someone who died in childbirth. And of course, that's going to block us on some level of being able to conceive, because we have this very deep fear about dying in birth. Or maybe there has been a history of infertility or difficulty conceiving or violence in relationships that we're carrying unconsciously within our ancestral energy. Perhaps there's memories of war or rape or all sorts of things. But also we were talking about the more Tibetan or the Buddhist or the karmic idea that perhaps we've also been here before. And that's not that far-fetched if we think that we're all part of the whole. That is a key tenet of Chinese medicine. And so if we link then that to quantum physics, then we're all connected to everything. So we actually have the memory of everything that's contained within the universe. So we're actually connected to more than just our ancestral energy. We're linked to a historical memory of things. And perhaps we have also lived in previous bodies. That is also something in ancient Chinese medicine is, why have we chosen to bring this particular egg and this particular sperm together? And they do have that concept of, well, we're laying down parameters for certain kinds of experiences that we can have in this lifetime, and that on some level we have chosen that. So there's all of that. It's a fascinating subject. We can't really prove any of this, but I do feel that it's rich, and there are many reasons why people have issues conceiving, and so there are many things to unravel. Now, how do we go about unraveling that? For me, the main tool that connects us with this Jing or this essence, so we could even say the essence is more than our DNA. It's like the energy that brought this egg and sperm together, which we could say is our soul, which is more than the two ancestral lines. And we know that also physically, when we bring the 23 chromosomes of our mother and father together, we repattern and something new emerges. So yes, we are of our two ancestral lines, but we're more than that, and we can modify what's going on. We can't change our parents, but we can change an energy that's been held in that ancestral line, and we can unblock it so that we do have resources. We're not limited just to this ancestral line, although it is a big part of our identity. And so how do we actually access all of this? This is the thing that I think is quite fascinating. There are special vessels, which I know some of you who are more familiar with my work have probably heard me talk about, called the extraordinary vessels. And these really, that's their domain. It's all about why we are here. Our essence is the energy of our egg and our sperm, but also the memory of why we brought them together. And we can repattern things. So if there are issues to do with us conceiving, then the main way that we can support these energies, but we have to remember we can't necessarily, with Shiatsu, we're opening up the possibilities for conception, but we have to also accept that maybe that's not meant to be now in the way that we thought it might be. Maybe it will happen in another way. Maybe it won't happen at all, whether naturally or through IVF. And I think it's important when we're working with people to remember that nothing is guaranteed. We can just try and transform and work with our energies in the best possible way and work towards that outcome. And the extraordinary vessels are definitely the best way, because essence, they circulate the essence. This essence isn't a static energy, it's the energy we inherit at the moment of conception, but it's constantly, like our DNA, being modified by our environment. So there's always a capacity for change. And the Chinese always would say that things are never fixed. We can always change who we are. And how we can change this is by working with these vessels. So I will be giving you some movements and maybe a meditation to connect with them. But just to say, basically, why they're so important is because they carry all of what I've just been talking about. And because the egg and the sperm are considered an expression of essence, and that's what these vessels circulate. So if we want to modify our essence, we need to work with these extraordinary vessels. There are 8 of them, and they have 8 organs, a bit like the 12 meridians have 12 organs. But the 12 meridians, there's 1 meridian per organ. The 8 extraordinary vessels, a bit like 8 is infinity, they don't have 1 organ each. They share the organs. And I think partly why this is the case as well is that the organs are much more encompassing than the 12 organs of the 12 meridians. Like the 12 meridians, you've got the lung, for example, and the large intestine. You have also got the heart and you have got the kidneys, and I'll talk about them, but they're really much more about our day-to-day circulation of energy from the air we breathe and the food we eat and how we make blood, which is a nourishing energy. But the 8 extraordinary vessels are more about who we are and why we're here and how we grow and develop and reproduce. So that's the domain of fertility. And the organs of the extraordinary vessels include our reproductive organs, which aren't organs of the 12 meridians. And I like to call them the Chinese names, which are for men, the palace of the sperm or the palace of the essence, the capacity to reproduce, and for women, the palace of the child. So whether or not women have children, women do have a capacity to create children. And there is that capacity not only to create, which men have, but to nourish and nurture. Whether or not women or men choose to express the essence through having children or through other creative activities, endeavors, it's just the potential for creation. But we still have this flow, all of us, whether we have children or not, within the 8 extraordinary vessels. I'm not going to describe them all here today because I'm going to give some specific points that are particularly useful for fertility and some specific organ connections and movements. So you can imagine, in terms of fertility, in terms of conceiving children, it's very much for women the egg, and then how we nourish the egg, and for men it's the sperm. And so they are very much related to our reproductive organs. So to support their quality, we need to work with our reproductive organs, our palaces. But we also need to support the connection with them and our kidneys. And our kidneys in Chinese medicine are more than just the kidneys in Western medicine, and they store our essence. And the most powerful way to connect with them is through our lower back, and a point in our lower back between our 2nd and 3rd lumbar vertebrae called the gate of life, or the gate of destiny. There are many names for it, in fact, which is below our physical kidneys, which is quite interesting because our physical kidneys actually started off lower down, and they emerge when we're in the womb. There's quite an important change of energy at 3 weeks after conception, which happens in our lower back, where the kidneys say, oh, that's the gate of our life, gate of destiny. So it's a really powerful point to connect with. We'll connect with that. I've got my hand on it now, but we'll connect with that with some movements. And we also do need to connect, as well as our palaces, with our heart, because our heart is like really our shen, our soul. We could say that's a way of connecting with why we decided to incarnate in this physical body, and the parameters that we've chosen for our life in this particular body. And then our brain So our brain is really our connection to space. In terms of fertility, of course, it's the connection between our brain and our kidneys and our womb, and as well our heart or our reproductive organs, if I'm thinking of men as well, our hormonal system. So that's also very much a direct connection for the extraordinary vessels. And so keep in mind these 4 core organs. And now I'm going to talk about what am I going to talk about? The difference between the journey of the egg and the journey of the sperm, and how if we're wanting to support male fertility, we're still using the extraordinary vessels, but we have to see how they are in the man's body in any given moment. Because for men, in this body, in this life, and for women, the cells that will become the mature sperm and the mature eggs that will potentially meet at fertilization, these cells have actually been in our physical body since we were only a few weeks old in our mother's womb. So you can see really how the future egg and the future sperm are very directly imprinted with the energy of the mother and this ancestral line. That is a very fundamental energy. But for men, until adolescence, the immature sperm cells don't really do very much. But at adolescence, there's this big explosion, and they just keep multiplying and multiplying and producing in their billions until a man dies. So a man at any age can potentially conceive, but we know now that after about 45, 50, the quality of the sperm, their actual form, their morphology, but also their capacity to move, their motility, declines, and there are more damaged sperm. So the risk of having children that have some kind of genetic issues does increase. And for women, we know that, oh no, actually I'm still talking about men. So yeah, they're continually producing sperm until they die, even though the quality of the sperm does decline with age. And so there isn't a cycle like women. So there are different sperm at different stages of maturation. And so in terms of working with the vessels, there always needs to be, for men, a nourishing quality, because the sperm needs to be nourished. And the way that the sperm is nourished is through our essence and through our blood. And so that's the extraordinary vessels. And perhaps we could say the most nourishing of the extraordinary vessels is the penetrating vessel, the sea of blood. And that actually follows a lot the kidney meridian in the body, but it also has a very anchoring quality in the legs. And we'll be doing some work with the penetrating vessel. We do have this central line, the conception vessel and the governing vessel, which is a bit like the chakra system in Indian and Tibetan ideas, this midline energy. But the penetrating vessel wraps around the midline, we could say, but also has an anchoring quality to the earth. So it's very nourishing and grounding and anchoring, and very important for men to have this nourishing, grounding, anchoring quality for the sperm. And then, but also the sperm need to move, and there needs to be a liveliness and a more yang quality. And the vessel that I'm using for that is really an aspect of the girdle vessel, this way that we can kind of move energies in the body, move them around. There is a nourishing aspect to the girdle vessel, but it's a more yang than the penetrating vessel, and they work together quite nicely. So I'm going to focus on those. You could work with conception and governing vessel, but there isn't so much the anchoring quality within them. So for men, it's always really working out in any given moment, whether it's a more kind of releasing energy that needs to be supported or a more anchoring, nurturing quality. For women who are trying to conceive, we have to really work a lot with the different qualities of the menstrual cycle. So the menstrual cycle During menstruation is when the womb is being cleared out, the lining reduces, and we give the blood out. It's a clearing out. It's actually very similar for men is ejaculation. It clears out sperm. It obviously clears out in a different way, but it's that sort of outward dynamic movement. But for women, there's a very specific phase in the circle when that in the cycle when that happens, menstruation. So menstruation is a time when women can be a bit more dynamic and try to letting go of, as everything's all interconnected, it's not just about letting go of blood, it's about letting go of anything which isn't serving us anymore. So it could be limiting beliefs, it could be we're clearer about what we want to let go of in terms of relationships with other people, in terms of what we eat, in terms of anything we want to let go of. It's an opportunity to clear out each month. I suppose you could say for men, when they ejaculate, it's an opportunity to clear out as well. And then for women, there's a specific, after menstruation, we need to gather back in because we've opened up into space, so we're a bit more free, and it's a time when we can transform more easily. So it's a time when we can shift patterns and modify our essence. But after menstruation, we can't just stay in this transforming, modifying phase. We need to bring ourselves back into our body and nourish ourselves. So that's more the opening up is more yang, and I'll work a bit with girdle vessel for that. And for the gathering in and drawing and gathering and nurturing, that's more the yin. And for women, it's the penetrating vessel, which is the sea of blood. We need to re-nurture our body, build back up the blood that we've lost through menstruation, and regenerate our energy. And people often think that this regeneration, this building of the blood, is just up to ovulation. And then after ovulation, if the egg isn't fertilized, then we let go again. But actually, that's not the case. There's a week after ovulation when the follicle that released the egg becomes a yellow body, the corpus luteum, and that's the name of the second half of the cycle. And this corpus luteum actually is what produces the progesterone, which is the dominant hormone of the second phase, but also rebuilds up estrogen levels after ovulation. They drop a bit, but then they build up again because the corpus luteum helps the estrogen levels to prepare essentially for, firstly, implantation, but then for a pregnancy. So there is a week when we're still needing to nourish, to build up the penetrating vessel and the blood, to nourish and potentially a fertilized egg. And the body does this whether the egg is fertilized or not for about a week. And then if no egg arrives, because it takes a week for the egg to arrive, then there's a signal sends back. Corpus luteum just disintegrates, and that's what initiates bleeding. And so that's why it's a few days before menstruation. There's a big change as the corpus luteum disintegrates. So that's a preparing for release. So we work with these different phases of the cycle, the emotions that bring up. We know that women's emotions change quite a lot according to different phases of the cycle. So really looking at how much the blood is able to build up. Does a woman's energy build up quickly after menstruation? Does it take a long time? Maybe there's a bit of stagnation. Maybe it stays weak through to the end of the cycle. That's not so good. And we know then there's a depletion of essence. We can say actually on any kind of level, issues with fertility always reflect the quality of the essence in some kind of way, whether it's emotionally, physically, whatever. And that's why we always need to work with essence. So we need to get this balance for both men and women of nourishing the yin. And I find that a particularly useful way of nourishing the yin is through the penetrating vessel, but also getting the yang to move. And I find that's really good with the girdle vessel. So what I think we'll do, I'm going to do some movements with you, but I think after me talking for a while, it's quite nice to just kind of let all those words settle in your body. And especially if you're trying to conceive yourself, whether you're a man or a woman, or if you're a therapist and you're working with a client who's trying to conceive, maybe just ponder, if you're looking at the whole of the picture of yourself or your clients, where do you think something isn't happening? What could be stopping conception? Just ponder that. I'm just going to ding my little bowl and let you, don't ponder it with your head. Try and let it reverberate through your body, which is why I'm going to bring my bowl. But also try and focus on the area around your palaces, so around your pubic bone, the area where your essence is stored, your lower back, your heart, especially the beating of your heart and the pumping of your blood, but also your brain. How's your brain connecting? So just focus on this circuit. Imagine a movement between your palaces, your kidneys, your heart, and your brain. Stay there for a bit longer, and I'm just preparing to go into movement. So in movement, as we're sitting, I might just start by rocking a little, just to get moving your pelvis. So you might be sat on the floor, maybe you're sat on a chair, but just begin to feel a movement within your pelvis, within your palaces, and within your lower back. And already with this rocking, a very gentle rocking to start with, maybe even closing your eyes, just have a sense of what's going on with the eggs, with your eggs or your sperm, or your essence. Even if you have no eggs, you still have the memory of eggs. And you can stay like that, or you might come even to a little bit of a squatting position. Now, squatting is really good for getting this energy, focusing around your girdle vessel, which is, like I've said, it is like a girdle, and it goes through your pelvic floor. And obviously your pelvic floor will go around the outer parts of your sexual organs. So connecting with your sexual organs and feeling their capacity for reproduction. Points around here, obviously as therapists, we don't touch the perineum, but you could touch your perineum yourself. Or you might prefer to just focus on your pubic bone, right in the center of your pubic bone, just on the top edge. There's an important point on the central channel, the conception vessel. It is about nourishing new beginnings, all beginnings. And each side, half a thumb width, are kidney points, which nourish our essence. So I'm just touching those. And then each side again are stomach points, which nourish our blood. 2 thumbs out. And even if you don't know these points, just connect really along just the top edge of your pubic bone, either with your hand or just feeling this movement. And then become aware also of your lower back. There's quite important points for the kidneys on your lower back. I might just turn around. You can't really see them so much, but you might be able to see my hands. Second and third lumbar vertebrae in the center is the gate of life point, in men. Just on the erector spinae muscle each side is another point that relates to the kidneys, bladder 23. And again, further out, about 3 thumb widths from the center, another point that relates to the kidneys, more in terms of the soul aspect of the kidneys. Why are we in this body? And then further out on the tip of your 12th rib, there's also another point that relates to the kidneys. And then as we come around to the front, all this line, 2 thumb widths from the midline, relates to the kidneys. So you can really gather from your lower back and draw around to your kidneys, maybe crossing your hands. The kidney line is really just on the inside of your recti muscles, the 2 muscles that go down here, and really gather together. That's quite nourishing. So that's really a gathering of the girdle vessel and a yin aspect, gathering in. Imagine like this, sort of gathering in the cloth and centering and ending up below your, just above your pubic bone. And feel how that is. And feel, especially as we're more sitting or squatting or kneeling, the connection of your perineum to the earth. You maybe even want to spread out your legs again and really connect with the earth through your perineum, and a stimulation of the earth through your legs. Now coming more to our heart. Well, we've actually been working our heart as we've been doing these movements. You might want to come to standing a little bit and just again feel how it is. Your perineum's a bit further from the earth, but you can feel the anchoring through your feet. Now in your feet, there's lots of nice important points that connect to the earth under the ball of your foot, kidney 1. On the inside of your big toe is the spleen meridian, very important for blood in Chinese medicine and connecting to earth. That goes up the inside of the leg. And then where I've got my hands just below my knee at the head of the tibia, stomach 36, another really important point for anchoring and connecting to the earth. So this is more that nourishing. Now I'm getting onto points of the penetrating vessel, the sea of blood. The only one of these 4 extraordinary vessels I've been talking about that has a connection down to earth, which really roots us and helps us to draw nourishment from the earth. And with that nourishment, we can give to nourish our egg or our sperm to conceive another being, or to nourish ourselves. That's what the maturescence I call now. I don't like the word menopause. The eggs, the energy of the eggs goes to nourish a woman. The eggs, all the non-fertilized eggs, get absorbed back into our body to nourish us. So for women, I'm now thinking of, I'm sitting on my eggs, even after we have no eggs. We still have the memory of the eggs because it's a transformation of essence. So if you do have a ball or even just a cushion, just feel how you can be both massaging your perineum at the same time as really getting support from the earth. This is a very nourishing movement. Feel like this egg, this ball, is nourishing you. For men, you could almost see it as the head of the sperm. And because the tail loses its tail when it goes into the egg. So you can really see this richness in the sperm as well, of the round head or the roundness of the egg, this more yin part of the sperm and the very yin egg, how that can nourish us. So we're nourishing our perineum, we're nourishing our feet. This gives us the anchoring quality, but at the same time, the movement. Remember, I said, for everybody, male or female, we need to get that balance of nourishing and moving. For men, it's any moment. There's both nourishing and moving. For women as well. But there are parts of the menstrual cycle where the emphasis is more on nourishment most of the cycle, in fact, and more on movement is around ovulation and menstruation. So now we might just sit on the ball, feeling if we want to, we've done quite a lot of movement. You might want to just feel a bit more still, close your eyes, go inwards, feel what's going on with your eggs or your sperm or your essence. And then bring your hands to your heart and just open your heart into space. There is this quality of, especially if we want to conceive a new being, where is that new being coming from? It is coming from outside our body. It's deciding to reside in a female body. But we need to be open to welcome it in. And even the male energy, the man, needs to be open to receiving this energy so that it can be transmitted through the sperm. So opening up to space, but without getting lost. There isn't actually a point that we call the guest house, which is on another extraordinary vessel, which opens to the possibility of welcoming in a new life. It's 5 thumblets up from the inside of the ankle, kidney 9, the guest house. So maybe just feel that, have one hand on the heart and one hand, it's about 1/3 of the way up between the knee and the ankle and the knee. Welcoming in from space, the heart, the kidneys. We hold our heart, we welcome in to our kidney. And then we might want to stand up, to open into space, to open, to feel this dynamic within our body of space and anchoring. So we've done a lot of anchoring with our feet, maybe just stepping, feel a sort of anchoring with our arms open to bring in space down to the earth. And then just standing, either you could stand with both feet and feel more of an anchoring, or you might want to still stand on one leg and feel that space coming down, even still walking. I think I need to be anchored. I went a bit too much into space, but if you feel you want to be more into space. And then open up to the space, to the possibility, to the infinite potential of the universe to welcome in whatever you need into your body. So if you're wanting to welcome in a new spirit, a new being, then welcome them in through your brain, through your eyes, through your throat, into your heart and into your palaces, supported by your kidneys in your back and the earth beneath your feet. And just breathe in this potential. And then we'll gradually gather back in. You can stay standing if you want, but you might want to come down onto all fours to just feel another way of anchoring. You might want to move, or you may just want to be very still, resting in the child's pose as though you've brought yourself back in from space, gathering in to earth. So I'm just going to let you absorb all these different energies. So you might want to be in the child's pose. You might want to be sitting in a meditation position. But I'm just going to let you absorb all of these different energies. So take as long as you want to settle. And I'm just going to dong my bell so you can have a nice vibration. To just let all these different movements be within your body. So stay sitting as long as you need to. And thank you for sharing this time with me. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.